It is crossover Thursday, and we have a big-time matchup with Justin Herbert going up against the vaunted Steelers pass rush, and whoever wins will take a huge step towards making the playoffs in 2025.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into this special Locked On Crossover Thursday. We have Locked On Chargers and Locked On Steelers. I'm the host, Daniel Wade from Locked On Chargers, and we also have Christopher Carter, not to be confused with the playmaker himself, Chris Carter, but host of Locked On Steelers. Thank you to all the everydayers for checking out today's show, and to make sure you never miss the show, go follow or subscribe to for free on the Locked On Chargers and Locked On Steelers YouTube channels, and follow them wherever you get your podcast from. And we have a big-time primetime Sunday night football matchup this weekend, and these games always seem to deliver. Last year was a little lame, and Justin Herbert doesn't play the entire game and gets hurt and kind of fizzled that out a little bit. But man, you go back and look at some of these matchups between the Chargers and the Steelers, and they deliver more times than not. So I'm very excited about this matchup this weekend. We're going to get into the biggest stories for both teams. We're going to get into the biggest matchup, which to me, I think has to just be the Chargers offensive line or lack thereof going up against the Steelers pass rush and defense that seemed to figure it out last week against the best offense in football. And then we'll get into exactly what it's going to take to win this game. But Chris, what's up, man? How you doing? Are you excited for this matchup?
Oh, heck yeah, I'm excited. It's always really fun, especially, Justin Herbert brings the star power. Jim Harbaugh, classic coach against Mike Tomlin, another classic coach. And it's kind of interesting since, for the last, 8 years, it seems like whoever's the home team has found a way to win this matchup. Outside of, I think there was one time where the Steelers won when it was at the soccer stadium when they were.
I think that was the Duck Hodges game, man.
Duck Hodges game, yeah. That's the only time. But whenever it's actually been actual fans being a real stadium, the home team has won. The San Diego Chargers won it in 25 a while back, and then the Steelers won it in 2018 in Pittsburgh. The Chargers won in Pittsburgh in 2018. But since then, the Steelers won the last time at Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium in 2024. And then 2021, you had that crazy shootout, 41-37. So it's been an interesting back and forth between these two teams. But I do think it's going to be interesting because both of these teams, like you said, are vying for playoff spots in what I think is becoming a more crowded AFC playoff race. And both of them have dealt with injuries, but granted, to the point that you were making in the opening, the Chargers' injuries to the offensive line, that's a huge part of what this team is supposed to be good at, was having those two superstar tackles in, and not having them, though they trade for Trevor Penning, could be a problem against the Steelers' pass rush that might have woken up last week from a lot of troubles they've been having.
Yeah, I think you would say that for sure. But Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKDOWNNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And we have to start with the biggest story. But yeah, to your point, you have the Le'Veon Bell Wildcat walk-off touchdown, several years ago. You have the shootout last time, 41-37, and the Big Ben Justin Herbert thriller. But going into this matchup, what do you think the biggest story is for the Steelers?
The biggest story is the defensive shift that they've made, and I wrote about that in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Go check that out at post-gazette.com, where I break down the film of this. But the Steelers went from a team that wanted to live in single high safety looks, where they played a lot of man coverage and trusted guys to just live on islands, and then blitzed a whole lot, to a team that plays a lot of two shell safety looks, where they could be aggressive and underneath coverage, but not have to live particularly on islands. And then they didn't blitz as much. And that shift disrupted what, the people who do the advanced analytics stuff said was the most efficient offense looking like in NFL history since they've started analyzing efficiency offense. That's in the Colts offense that still, I believe, leads the NFL in points scored and yards gained and yards per play, because they've been highly efficient this year in how they've moved the ball and how they've got in the end zone. On only 2 of their 11 drives last week did they make it into the red zone. And the Steelers defense disrupted what they wanted to do in the run game, what they wanted to do in the quick passing game. And that's what's different right now. now. If you're looking at the Steelers pass rush numbers, as you were talking, Daniel, before the show, and you asked me, how are their pass rush numbers so terrible? They're giving up the most passing yards in the league. Well, partially it's because I think all year they were kind of going on this plan where they were saying, hey, we have the man cover corners who can just be really sticky in coverage, and we can just blitz aggressively and send all these angles at you. But the problem was when they're in these man coverage, these guys, Jalen Ramsey, still dangerous, still tough, but Darius Slay, mindful of his skills, they don't have the same shutdown speed that they used to in their primes. And so they are giving up a lot more underneath quick passes. And that's what quarterbacks were kind of living on against the Steelers, especially Joe Flacco and Jordan Love in back-to-back weeks. They were just quick throws, and then they hit on the occasional deep bomb. But a lot of their offense was built on getting off the quick throw, getting the easy yards, and keeping the pass rush from ever getting home. Well, against the Colts, that changed. They ran 2 high safeties, which meant those corners, they could jump a few more passes underneath. They could try to press you a little bit more. And if they got beat, they knew they had safety help. And that forced that forced Daniel Jones to hold on to the ball a little bit more. He got sacked, I think, 5 times in that game, threw 3 interceptions, had 2 sack strip fumbles that the Steelers recovered. They were just all over it. And that's the kind of defense this team wants to play. They want to stuff your run, they want to rush your quarterback, and they want to force mistakes that they're opportunistic on and cause turnovers. The Steelers' 2 best wins, I think, this season have been the Patriots and Colts, the 2 top seeds in the AFC, and both times they forced at least 5 turnovers. That's the ticket to this game. And if I'm the Chargers, I need to find a way to get this run game going. I need to find a way to get this quick pass game going. And I need to find a way to disrupt that pass rush from getting active and disrupting Justin Herbert. That's when the Steelers are at their best.
Yeah, easier said than done. You know what I mean? I mean, that is, of course, the Steelers figuring it out, kind of finding the formula the week before they play the Chargers isn't great news. But at least the Chargers have some tape on it now, right? Because it definitely seemed to disrupt the Colts and what they were doing last week. That being said, you still have to go out there and stop the hottest running back in the league, and they did that very well. Also, just turned Daniel Jones back into a pumpkin, and the Chargers saw it a couple of weeks ago where, the Colts ran through them like a buzzsaw and put up 38 on him, and the Chargers just couldn't keep up in a shootout type of a game, turned the ball over twice, which didn't help him either. But I think for me, the biggest story is, especially considering what the Chargers are dealing with, is just like, can Justin Herbert carry this team enough to go beat what I think is another good team? And what I saw last week was a defense that looks like a good defense again, because like you said, quarterbacks have been able to have their way a little bit with the Steelers, but with the shift last week, maybe that's coming a little bit back down to earth, because as it stood, it was 4 out of 5 games where quarterbacks were throwing for at least 340 yards against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And the last time Justin Herbert played them healthy, he had 382 passing yards and 90 rushing yards. The 90 rushing yards is an interesting point, because if you think if it's a lot of man coverage, things would be a little easier for Justin Herbert to find the time to be able to scramble and do what he's done really well this year, which is have the most rushing yards out of any quarterback in the entire NFL. That feels like a little harder to do against a more zone-heavy look that maybe the Steelers are going with this week. But also, you have a guy in Justin Herbert who is the king of the cover 2 hole shot right down the sideline. You saw the Colts go to that quite a bit last week with Alec Pierce and some other guys, Michael Pittman at times, trying to find the in-between of those zones and being able to attack that area of the field. Justin Herbert can do that. He can only do it if he's standing up, right? And I think that is the biggest thing, is just like, can Justin Herbert keep up the magic act? Can he keep playing Houdini in the pocket and giving this Chargers offense a chance? Because their offense, especially without Marion Hampton, has been very hit or miss when the running game goes. And Christopher, I just think that, man, like, it's asking a lot for Justin Herbert to go out and beat this Steelers defense on his own, but it also feels at the same time like that's kind of what it's going to have to take for the Chargers to get a win.
I think that's the big thing here is Justin Herbert. I think he has a lot of potential that hasn't had a chance to shine too bright, because there's a lot of superstar talented quarterbacks in the AFC. You think back since 2017, the AFC has been represented by 3 quarterbacks in the Super Bowl: Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and one time Joe Burrow. And it's wild to think that, but it's just been that blown up. And that kind of pushes off to the side Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, who feel like they're having their own Super Saiyan battle going on, right? So
Totally.
then Justin Herbert's just like, hey, I'm here too. That's kind of what it's been. But I think that's the shame of the situation for the Chargers right now. I really think Justin Herbert's doing a really good job handling situations right now for the Chargers. I mean, you see him, whether he's blitzed or not blitzed, he has the same touchdown interception ratio. He's trying to manage things. He doesn't have the run game that Jim Harbaugh wanted to have with the investment into Omar and Hampton and Najee Harris to have this thing. The investment they put in this O-line, it's just kind of wild to see all that, and so that puts a dent in things. But I think that what the Chargers look at, if you can find a way to get this run game going, catch the Steelers off guard with some alignments that maybe you haven't used some before, and get the run game going, that's the kind of stuff that can start to open up weaknesses in the Steelers defense, to open up the short passing game. And when you get the short passing game going, then that pass rush can't figure you out, because that's what they're trying to do right now. They don't move TJ Watt around a whole lot. They'll keep him over the right tackle for most of the game, but they will move Nick Herbig, the third-year pass rusher out of Wisconsin. They will move Alex Highsmith. They will blitz different off-ball linebackers. They will send the occasional corner blitz, but they'll also drop one of these guys randomly into coverage, and that's what kind of caught Daniel Jones off guard with one of his interceptions. He thought that he had an underneath receiver, and Peyton Wilson was just sitting there waiting for the pass. And that's where Justin Herbert's going to have to be careful as he goes through his reads. The Steelers are trying to trick you into, at least last week, they're trying to trick you into the quick pass that you judge way too quickly, and they just jump all over it, and then they're being opportunistic. If Justin Herbert allows the Steelers defense to create turnovers, that's the exact kind of football Mike Tomlin is engineering as a head coach right now.
Well, unfortunately for the Chargers, they have an easily tricked offensive line, but that will be a big part of it. And we're going to get into the biggest matchups of this game, what will end up deciding, and more in today's Locked On Crossover Special. First, though, I need to tell you guys about Mizzen in Maine, because you know the saying, look good, feel good. The problem is that most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They look sharp but feel stiff, hot, and high maintenance. That's where Mizzen in Maine comes in, because Mizzen in Maine makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've perfected it ever since. And to me, Mizzen in Maine is a cheat code for certain situations. I know for Chris Carter over there, it's going to be in the press box. You could rock Mizzen in Maine, but not have to be as stuffy as what all the rest of the press are going to feel like in there. And also for me, weddings. It's the best. It's something you can actually wear to a ceremony, but also feel good in at the reception once the drinks start flowing and you're not just in there in a stiff suit, uncomfortable. So right now, Mizzen in Maine is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzeninmaine.com with promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Maine, M-A-I-N.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen in Maine stores in select states. I also have to tell you guys that Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play everywhere Prize Picks operates, including great for me because I'm in California, but you can also do it in Texas and Georgia as well. I like picking my favorite players, but they also have stacks, which now means you can pick more or less on Steph Curry's points or threes and assists in the same lineup. But for this game, you could go with Justin Herbert to throw for more or less than 256.5 passing yards, and combine that with DK Metcalf to have less or more than 53.5 receiving yards. It's that simple. You hit on 2 and you win. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, Chris, we have more to get into in this big-time prime-time matchup on Sunday Night Football. And I already kind of teased a little bit what the biggest matchup is going to be for me. I want to know where your head's at going into this one, what you think is going to be the most pivotal matchup as far as these players going up against each other. It's going to end up deciding this one.
Like we were kind of talking about the pass rush and I think for the offense for the Chargers, they have to limit the turnovers. They haven't been great at that right now. I think the offense, it ranks like 22nd in giveaways right now. They're averaging 1.3, 1 1/3 turnovers per game. That's where the Steelers want to feed off of. They right now they're averaging creating 2 takeaways a game. That's the second highest rate in the NFL. If the Steelers get that going, it's going to be a disaster for the Chargers. It's going to take them off schedule. It's going to allow the Steelers to feed off things and create more plays, because that's the thing. They have a turnover culture. Like literally, I was talking to some of their players, and they have like their outside linebackers coach, Denzel Martin. He'll literally have a cut up reel every Saturday night of all the turnovers in the NFL the previous week. And he'll just say, I want you to visualize how you're going to get these next turnovers this week. And Peyton Wilson was like, he said, he's like, I got to get me some of those this week. And he had an interception and tipped a pass that led to another interception. And so it's part of the culture they try to instill. And they understand hey, the other team needs to make mistakes involved in these turnovers, but you can still be the chaos that causes the mistakes. And that's a philosophy the Steelers embrace. The Chargers have to watch out for that. So you talk about the offensive line. I'm going to let you touch on that. But I think on the flip side, the Chargers have to watch out for what the Steelers are trying to do on offense to make things easier for Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers don't have a prolific group of receiving talent, but they have good guys all around that can challenge you if you're not on your A game. And DK Metcalf, you know how athletic he can be. When he gets the ball, he is dangerous. And teams are trying to deny him more and more. But you can't overlook Pat Freiermuth and what he can do. You can't overlook Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, because both of those guys have 4.3 speed that once they get the ball, if you don't have them, boxed up, they can create big plays. And then the way the Steelers want to run the ball, they may not have a great running stats, but when they bring on their extra lineman package, they'll often bring on Spencer Anderson, number 74. When he's out there, they love to pitch it out wide to whatever strong side they are, to pull a lineman, get him moving in space. They have their big tight end, Darnell Washington, number 80. He's 6'7", 300 pounds, Insane. And he will hit the snot out of you. And they love to get that going to let the run game start to take over games. And when they start doing that and they start calling play action, then Aaron Rodgers gets into a rhythm. He starts hitting the quick passes, but he also looks for the shots in your defense. And he's still a very smart quarterback. He still knows where to attack you. So if I'm the Chargers, I have to disrupt that run game, and I have to take away those quick passes and try to be consistent there. And I asked Aaron Rodgers about Derwin James, and he acknowledged, hey, that guy is dangerous at every level of the defense. He's well aware of what he can do. But the Steelers, you look at what they can do on offense. It's the kind of things that won't dominate you, but they will annoy you, because they will try to figure out the little spots that you're not covering, and they'll do just enough that if their defense is causing turnovers, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, how did this team get up 10 points?
Yeah, no, I totally understand you. I think it's such a good point, because one thing the Chargers have done really well is be able to cause chaos for quarterbacks who aren't super mobile, right? You look back to Geno Smith, 3 picks, Tua, 3 picks, Carson Wentz, a few picks, Cam Heyward really struggled. Where they had problems are guys like Jackson Dart and Patrick Mahomes. Daniel Jones gave them issues. Jaden Daniels also. When they've had stationary guys, they've been able to get after them. And the Chargers, to their own credit, to their own pass rushers' credit, have 9 sacks over the last 2 games. So the trio of Odafe Owe, who they got from the Ravens, who I'm sure Steeler fans are, familiar with, combined with Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipulotu, has given this team a different element and a different ability to get after the passer, especially a not super mobile passer in Aaron Rodgers. That has gone in their favor this year. But to your point, if you can't stop the run and get those obvious passing situations where Aaron Rodgers can't lean on the play action and can't lean on those easy buttons that he really thrives at and that quick release, you're not going to be able to use it, right? That quick pass rush is just going to be stuck in the mud, not being able to really get after it the way that they can. So Darnell Washington's, availability for this one, I think, is big, especially when you get him out there in, those 12, 13 personnel packages. The Chargers will have to show that, they can take the punch in the face that the Steelers are going to want to do. And I think it even goes back to last year where the Chargers wanted to instill this, physical persona, and they wanted to be a Jim Harbaugh blue-collar team. And the Steelers came out and punched them in the mouth, right? And that was a game with Justin Fields that they beat the Chargers in, partially because Justin Herbert, got hurt when the Chargers were leading at halftime. He wasn't able to finish the game, but it went further than just Justin Herbert being hurt. The Chargers got out-physicaled in that game well before that. But yeah, to me, this game will be decided on the Steelers pass rush versus the Chargers line and just how much chaos they can create. I mean, you're talking about a line for the Chargers that doesn't have those two tackles you talked about, but now has Trevor Penning in the mix. Where is he going to line up? Mekhi Becton's been in and out of the lineup. They could really use him this week. But you're talking about Jamari Sawyer playing left tackle, which he hasn't really done since his rookie season in 2022. And at right tackle, you're probably going to have Trey Pipkins, who is your swing tackle, but has, games this year where he's allowed 9+ pressures. So there's just nowhere to hide for this Chargers offensive line, which is what scares me, right? Because you have Cam Heyward, you have Nate Herbert, you have Alex Highsmith potentially, you have TJ Watt. You can't just help your tackles and think that's going to do it, right? And then you're going to be able to kind of just get away with that. On the interior, on the edges, the Steelers have guys who can create that chaos. And man, what they did to that Colts offensive line last week, who stymied the Chargers plenty when they played against each other, was really eye-opening to me. To me, that was like a real statement of, that was one of the best offensive lines in the league. They did that to Daniel Jones. It wasn't just Daniel Jones, going back to his Giants days. They turned him back into that. They gave him PTSD. They, made him have flashbacks of when things were really bad in New York. But it started for them with stopping Jonathan Taylor too, right? If they could have just fed Jonathan Taylor all day, they would have done it, right? And then maybe that would have been the success that they, could have had, and maybe it's a different story. But that being said, the Chargers offensive line versus this pass rush, even if the teams are similar talent-wise, that is a huge, huge mismatch. And they have some corners that if they can just stay with the Chargers' pretty good receiving core enough, right, it's going to be problematic for Justin Herbert, and he's going to have to pull off some Houdini acts. And he is good under pressure, but there's just only so much that you can take. And honestly, I think one of the biggest keys to the Chargers winning this game or having a chance to win this game is just keeping Justin Herbert on the field, because last time when they matched up, they weren't able to do that. So we're going to get into exactly what these teams have to do to win this game on today's Locked On Crossover Special and more coming up right after this. First, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because the NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in a stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping up at checkout. It's super frustrating, and that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. That means you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included, so the price that you see is the price that you pay. There's nothing worse than thinking you got a great deal on tickets, and then once you get to the checkout, it jumps up 20%, and now you're not even sure if you can pay for the parking to get into the stadium because of all of those extra fees. You're not going to have that with Game Time, and you're going to know exactly what the view is from your seat, which I always love as well. But for this game, if you're able to go, you can get into SoFi for as little as $173 for this primetime matchups. I saw a bunch of seats, good seats, under $200 for this one. And you can also, have to check back, because the closer it gets to kickoff, the lower the price is. So that might not be the lowest price to get into this game. All you have to do, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, Chris. Well, I think history has told us that there's a good chance that this is going to be a good matchup, but I do think on both sides of things here, there are going to be certain things, at least for the Chargers, I know, if they don't get it done, they're going to lose. And that's the whole point of this segment. And I think when you're talking about the keys to victory, that's what you're getting into. You kind of already touched on one of the ones I'm going to get into as well in the matchups. But where would you go with the three things you think the Steelers have to do to get the big-time win on Sunday Night Football?
I think it's kind of what we talked about. They'll live up to their defensive philosophy. They believe in stuffing the run. That leads to rushing the quarterback. And if they take away the primary reads, rushing the quarterback causes chaos, and that leads to turnovers. So the Steelers, number one, have to stuff the runs so that they can get to creating their turnovers. That is just a huge process of how they operate. One thing that Mike Tomlin acknowledged on Tuesday when we talked to him about the Chargers is he said that, hey, the last time we played these guys, Justin Herbert was hobbled before he even got to the game. And so he acknowledged that like his mobility is dangerous and it's something the Steelers have to monitor. And so that's another thing the Steelers have to get ready for. And granted, Daniel Jones can be a mobile quarterback. They were able to stand with him, but he knows that Justin Herbert's a bit different of a quarterback than Daniel Jones. So I think that's going to be a big part of it is, live up to that defensive philosophy, but be aware of what Justin Herbert is going to want to do to try to cancel you out and have those counters ready to go. And I think that's what's going to get tricky with this game is with the Steelers' recent adjustments. How much do the Chargers buy into, okay, they are going with too high safety looks. Let's try these things to open that up. And then if they are able to hit on a couple things, how do the Steelers adjust to that? That's going to be that chess match that I think could be really interesting. So stuff to run, to get to your defensive philosophy. But I think also on offense, I think the Steelers could really use their run game to get back to working, because when the run game's working, it then opens everything else up in the passing game. And if the Chargers are able to stuff the run, it's going to be interesting to see what matchups the Steelers think they can win in the passing game. Aaron Rodgers, has been good at finding guys, but like one thing I asked him about on Wednesday in the Steelers locker room was about the balance of spreading the ball around. And we'll talk more about this for Locked On Steelers listeners. I'll talk more about this with Mike DeFabo on our Friday episode. But he talked about the importance of you just need to hit where the defense isn't. He's like, you find the open man, and him believing that philosophy and not trying to force balls to guys just because he thinks DK Metcalf should get the ball or he thinks Darnell Washington should get the ball or anything like that. That I think is a big part of what the Steelers hope can manifest in this offense. So if they can manifest that in this offense in just hitting the Chargers where they're not, they can do enough damage on offense that if it combines with that turnover formula that they like to create, that can be your ticket to taking control of this game on the road, taking the energy out of the crowd in LA and kind of giving the Steelers a chance to control the pace of this game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll start with, the one you just touched on there, which is just the turnover battle. And for the Chargers, I think in certain games, it's more important than others, right? Like last week against the Titans, they could afford, to have a pick, even a pick six like they had in that game. And they still were able to win comfortably with, the Titans really never having a chance in the fourth quarter. This isn't one of those games, right? And every game, it has a different level of importance. It's always important. But this game, I think it's absolutely pivotal. And I think why it's so important in this game is because of the matchup they have with the Steelers, who have been incredibly good, to your point, taking the football away. They rank second in the NFL. You said it. They're averaging 2 a game, 16 in 18 games. Obviously, when you have 6 in 1 week, like you had last week, right? That's going to boost those numbers a little bit, and it shows you exactly, even if you're, the hottest team in football, like the Colts are, you can't survive that. For the Chargers, there's way less margin for error than the Colts have, right? So to win the turnover battle in this game is a must for them to have a chance. It doesn't even guarantee them a win necessarily. And I think the one thing we didn't touch on yet is to be careful of the tip balls, right? 6 times this year, Justin Herbert has had a tipped or batted ball intercepted. That's terrible luck. I mean, I think, Patrick Mahomes has 12 and none of them have been intercepted. Either way, you're going up against a team. Cam Heyward has 5 of those by himself. Go back to the last game and watch it. He had 2 of them in the first half that turned into big plays or turnovers for the Steelers. So the Chargers have to be aware of that. And the Chargers also have given the ball away 12 times, which is 10th worst in the league so far this year. It's been since week 1 that the Chargers haven't given the football away. If there was ever a week to get back on track in that regard, it's this week. And if not, it might cost them the game. My second thing here, special teams has to show up. You go back to look at the Steelers game last week. They didn't end up scoring on it, but one of the things that kind of felt like it shifted that game was the muffed punt that the Colts had in it. Steelers end up taking over. The Chargers can't afford that. Last week, you give a 63-yard punt return touchdown to the Titans. You get down 14-7 in a game you had no business being 14-7 down in. And for the Chargers, statistically, they've been the worst special teams unit in football. 32nd in coverage and punts, 32nd on kickoff coverage. It doesn't get worse than that. And to be the worst special teams in the league and have the best kicker statistically in NFL history is almost impressive if it wasn't so frustrating. The Steelers had a big return to open things up last week. It has to be good. With what the Chargers are dealing with offensively, they cannot afford for their special teams not to be good. They're just not, it's not a way that they can afford to win. And of course, I touched on it a little bit earlier. Keep Justin Herbert alive. If Justin Herbert is in this game, you have a chance. When you don't have a chance is last year when the Chargers offense was already not looking great. But as soon as he left, so did every chance of the Chargers winning that game. I mean, Trey Lance has no chance to get this done. This isn't a roster that can win with the backup quarterback. Justin Herbert has to play Justin Herbert has to be special. And last year, going into it, Justin Herbert was banged up, but Rashawn, Slater, and Joe Alt both at least started that game. They also both left the game with injuries in that one, so you lost Justin Herbert and Slater and Joe Alt, and you don't even have part of the game with those two guys out there for this one, which is very concerning. But Justin Herbert has to make it through this game healthy. The Chargers have to win or at least be even in the turnover battle to have a chance. And their special teams, which has been anything but special, has to show up because the rest of the team just isn't good enough, Christopher, to be able to overcome it and overcompensate for it, especially against the Steelers team, which I think is good. And they're going to need to have their A game to get it done.
One thing I'll say for Chargers fans to hold on to, and I know a lot of Steelers fans are going to resonate with this, is that just having backup tackles does not doom you against the Steelers pass rush if you can get that quick passing game going. The Steelers have had several games in the past years where teams knew that's not the matchup we want to go with. Let's get the ball out quick. Let's find creative ways to run the football, and that'll slow down TJ Watt and Cam Heyward and those guys from being able to just fire off the ball and get it. But if you are the Chargers and you can't get that run game going, and all of a sudden you got a lot of 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, and then you're not getting the quick read off the line of scrimmage, and you got to wait 4 or 5 seconds before someone gets open, that plays right into the Steelers' hands. I think Jim Harbaugh, his coaching staff, they've got to get a plan together that knocks the Steelers off of their schedule, that finds a way to get 2nd and short, 3rd and short consistently, and then in those still don't hold on to the ball too long. Trust that they're coming for you, or if you do, it's because you rolled Justin Herbert out and you bought him time naturally to find open guys. I think that's got to be the priority. Like you said, don't let him get killed. If he does get killed, it destroys the Steelers feed off of this energy. That's the other thing. Like when they get, it's like when they get 1 and they get 2, it comes in bunches, man, because then they start like feeding off each other. Everyone wants to do it. And it's something that to take away the energy of the Steelers, you have to make them feel like they can't get those turnovers. And so, again, it's doable. It's not impossible, even with the backup tackle situation, but you need Justin Herbert to be on his smartest day, and you need to come up with a game plan that gives him good, quick read options, keys to feed off of. But it'll be interesting to see, because the keys that you would have had for the Steelers for the last 8, what are the records? 5-3 in the last 7 games before last week are going to be completely different from the keys that you probably came if you watched the last week. And so the Steelers can even have a choice themselves. Like, how often do we kind of stick to the game plan we had last week? Do we go back and forth? That's, again, I think this game comes down to that chess match. Where does Justin Herbert find the weaknesses in the Steelers defense, especially in the quick passing game? If that is not there for the Chargers, I think this puts them in a really tough spot.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, like if they try to keep the Chargers off balance by going back to what they did before a little bit more. But I do think that a team, especially blitzing less, like Justin Herbert has diced up the Vikings and Brian Flores because they love to blitz too much. Justin Herbert's great against the blitz. Where he really has problem are the teams that don't have to blitz to get to him, and the Steelers check that box off. So, that's what I'm doing. If I'm the Steelers, I'm not trying to get too cute. I am trying to confuse the offensive line that's easily confusable, but I am not trying to do too much to try to get pressure. The pressure will come, and it's up to, and I don't think Chargers fans have a ton of faith and Greg Roman to have the creative enough game plan to be able to keep the Steelers on their toes. But when these guys have gotten injured, because Joe Alt's been in and out of the lineup all year, Rashawn Slater's been gone all year. You're 6-3, right? So you've had to deal with these things. This isn't a new problem. It's just a new matchup with specifically new monsters that are on the other side of things. So I think when these things have been down, Greg Roman has leaned more into the creativity in the running game, and although Jonathan Taylor wasn't able to do it, the Chargers will have that task for themselves this week to keep themselves ahead of the sticks, because I know that'll be part of my Friday show tomorrow, because if you're not ahead of the sticks against this team, this defense is going to eat you alive. So that is going to wrap things up for today's show. Thank you, as always, for making the Locked On Chargers and Locked On Steelers your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the guys over at Locked On NFL to keep up with everything going on around the league, like my guy Tyler the Madman Rowland and Tony Wiggins in the Barbershop. 2 shows a day on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. And make sure you're also subscribing or following for free to the Locked On Chargers and Locked On Steelers YouTube channels, and following those wherever you get your podcast from as well. I think This game is going to deliver. It could be ugly, but I do think that, there's just something about primetime where Justin Herbert steps up for these matchups, and there's something about the Steelers versus the Chargers that seems to bring out the best in both of these teams. And these coaches, are going to give it their all with Mike Tomlin and Jim Harbaugh. They all also, I'm sure, want to beat each other. But also, man, like, this game, depending on what happens, like, could have a huge effect. Like, the tiebreaker between these two teams could be important at some point, unless the Steelers run away with the AFC North. So, hugely important matchup. Make sure you guys are back here for the Friday episodes of Locked On Chargers and Locked On Steelers. But should be a hell of a game, and we can't wait to watch it. But until tomorrow, guys, make sure you guys follow everything Locked On, and because it is your team every day.